for two supervillains.
Oh, you're a villain, all right. Just not a super one.
Yeah? What's the difference?
Presentation!
Do it again, I wasn't looking.
Hello everyone, my name is Ian from Incendium D&D, and welcome back to the Dungeon Crawl series that I'm doing on this channel. Last time I talked about pacing and how you can plan your sessions kind of like the plot diagram used in literature. This video, as you may guess, is all about presentation, how you run the game and enhance your player's experience through peripheral tools and gameplay design. There's a couple of things that I want to make clear before I really get into it. I want you guys to keep in mind the spectrum of narrative versus simulationist gameplay, the balance between weaving a cohesive and exciting narrative and simulating an actual dungeon crawling experience and what that might be like. I've gotten some flack about how I'm playing the game wrong by using Dungeons & Dragons to create a cooperative storytelling experience that my players and I can enjoy together. These kinds of comments usually go to the tune of, there's plenty of other systems that you could use. Why Dungeons & Dragons? Why not just use a rules-light game system instead of something that was designed for dungeon crawling and combat? And these are the kind of people that are looking for more of a simulationist experience. They want their characters to be able to die at any moment just because of the die roll, not because of narrative reasons. For them, the rules are the most important thing. But personally, D&D just scratches that narrative itch for me. It's got just the right amount of rules for me to latch onto, and also has enough simplicity for me to feel like I can weave a interesting narrative for my players. And in those moments, I might not even use dice because it's not worth rolling. D&D 5th edition, and hopefully 1D&D in the future, gives me the creative freedom that I need as a dungeon master to choose to use the rules or not. And that's why we need to consider this narrative versus simulationist spectrum when designing our dungeon crawl. With that out of the way, let's get started. Let us consider the spectrum of acting versus writing in a Dungeons & Dragons game. This is something I haven't really talked about as much on its own, but you can hear my thoughts on text-based gameplay in this video linked below. D&D is a role-playing game, and a lot of people find excitement in figuring out how their character will respond or behave in a certain context. But I'm the kind of DM and player that prefers to use creative writing in my roleplay, because it makes me feel like I can more clearly distinguish myself from my character. And generally speaking, I am more satisfied with taking my time to craft a narrative experience through creative writing than I am through acting. Of course, neither of these is better than the other, and your group is welcome to play however they like. But it is important to acknowledge that your playstyle will affect how your dungeon crawl goes. Many people play D&D in the style that it was first conceived, getting together with your friends at a physical table on game night and running through a dungeon while role-playing and interacting with each other. This usually involves acting out how your character would behave, maybe using a funny voice or two, and trying to create some real character development. And of course, this form of socialization carries with it many benefits. It helps people learn improvisation, encourages them to try new things, and discover who their character is through gameplay. And there's something to be said for people who become proficient in this style of play, to be sure. You have these awesome voice actors who also know how to create a compelling character in the moment. However, I would say that acting isn't really conducive to an online game, especially in a dungeon crawl. Deeper narratives require a lot more self-discipline to attain, and with technical challenges like microphone issues or talking over each other, it can be really easy to slow down the game and make it less immersive. there are plenty of people out there who, despite enjoying the acting experience, are uncomfortable or uncertain about how to really portray their character in the best way they want. For these people, I say that text-based gameplay is probably a good choice. When I entered high school, and even before that, I fell in love with creative writing. I was, of course, reading all of the young adult teen thriller novels like my classmates. Some of my favorite series come from authors like Rick Riordan or Derek Landy, and as I read, I became inspired and tried it out for myself. It wasn't great, but like any skill, it improved with time. In fact, I even started playing some online RPGs like Adventure Quest Worlds. Man, that's a throwback. This is what introduced me to roleplay as a whole. All of this practice sharpened my skills and refined my taste for good writing, to the point at which I often feel like I can communicate more clearly through text. When I started playing D&D, I started like most people do, acting out my character through voice. But more and more, I found it difficult to make significant choices and really portray the character I was going for. Oftentimes, he would just end up with the goofy personality that I myself have. But during quarantine, my friends and I experimented with text-based gameplay, and soon I found that a whole new world of roleplay and interaction was opening up to me. Suddenly, every character I played was deep and meaningful. You've actually been seeing the results of one of these characters in a lot of my videos lately, Rowan Val Wren, the Valkyrie of the Raven Queen. I wouldn't have commissioned this piece of art if I didn't feel like my character was worth doing that for. And this art was fairly expensive, but well worth it. It commemorates the experience I've had playing this character to the best of my ability. The benefits of text-based gameplay lend themselves very well to an online dungeon crawl. It allows every player to digest exactly what's going on at the table and express their character appropriately. Again, I'm not saying that you can't have a dungeon crawl that's audio-based. I'm just saying this is what I've found success with, so give it a try. A dungeon's theme plays an important role in the presentation of your dungeon. It adds to the player's immersion and suspends their disbelief. When designing your dungeon, whether it's at the physical table or on a VTT of your choice, you'll need to return to this theme time and again for each room that you make. If you're having difficulty imagining what the overarching theme of your dungeon is, try thinking about what kind of creatures or monsters live inside of it first. Maybe they're undead, an aberration, or a fiend. Maybe the dungeon belongs to a noble of the Feydark, and your party is trying to rescue an NPC or even another party member from its depths. Actually, that sounds kind of cool, and makes me want to do that. The theme could even be something more abstract, like representing one of the stages of grief or the 7 deadly sins. No, not that 7 deadly sins. Although, that could be kind of awesome if I think about it more. Any of these things could be a good theme for your dungeon. And I've kind of talked about this in pacing already, but you should also consider the loot and traps of your dungeon in your presentation. These should also reflect the theme. Now, you don't want to beat your players over the head with this, but it is important to reinforce it over the course of the session. If you've been describing the same kinds of paraphernalia in each room, maybe in the next room you just say, in this room, there's more of the same except for one thing. And that could make things a little bit more interesting. At the virtual tabletop, you're also going to want to enhance your player's immersion through ambience. I'm going to define ambience here as anything that has to do with the peripheral narrative experience of gameplay. At the physical table, this might include dramatic lighting, handouts, music, or things for the players to interact with. So how do we convert this to a virtual tabletop? At the physical table, dramatic lighting might be playing in a candlelit room with the curtains drawn. Or it might be using a paper with a hole cut in the middle to place over the tokens and represent how far your characters can see in the dungeon. Things like this can increase the suspense of your game considerably. In my first video on the series, I talked about Roll20 and how to use dynamic lighting on there, so I won't repeat exactly what I said word for word. I'll just say that dynamic lighting online can really make or break the game that you're trying to run. When used well and clearly understood by both DMs and players, this tool can make it feel like you're really roaming through the dimly lit halls of a dungeon. When used poorly, dynamic lighting can create a sense of frustration in the players, especially if the DM has to fiddle with it during the session. And if you're not careful, character tokens can actually disappear into the empty space behind dynamic lighting. I don't know how this looks on other virtual tabletops, but on Roll20, if the character's token goes past a cordoned-off area using dynamic lighting, then they might end up seeing nothing at all, or worse, the whole map of the dungeon. And that can really disrupt a player's experience, which is why I actually talk a lot about self-discipline and not moving your character's tokens too quickly. Now, I know we're talking about dungeon crawls here, but it's hard to understate the importance of visuals and portraits of characters and non-player characters, including monsters. I frequently use still image backdrops to give my players something to look at while I'm describing to them what's going on. Even in scenes that have combat, if there's a tonal shift or a change in the paradigm, then I might want to jump back to a still image before bringing them back to the map to finish combat. Sure, a lot of maps include far more than just the grid of rooms and tunnels. Plenty of them depict treasure, torches, bedrolls, and more. And you can always add tokens to the board to show players what monster they're fighting or what NPC they're meeting. But seeing a rendering of that image will elevate their immersion. When doing this online, you want to make sure that the image is properly sized and small enough so that it doesn't clutter the board entirely. For example, I don't use images on the map of every single monster that they might be encountering, just the big bad one. Like I said, if it's a backdrop, I would probably use this sparingly on the actual map. For example, if the players enter the boss battle, this might be a good time for a cutscene where we show that backdrop and then return to the game. This is the thing I actually spend the most time considering. Not because music or sound design are the most important factors in a dungeon crawl, but because it's a lot of fun. Soundscaping is any sound or combination of sounds that forms or arises from an immersive environment. Most people think of music when soundscaping, and I've definitely crafted a lot of playlists for my players to enjoy that will enhance the tone of the game during a given situation. Examples of this include Tavern, Travel, Divine, or Dread. But you can have more than just music in the background. There are loads of content creators on YouTube creating ambient sounds for your D&D games. Think of things like wind blowing through the trees, birds chirping, or water dripping in a cavern. And a lot of VTTs have a jukebox widget that allows you to upload your own sounds, so you can feel free to mix and match however you like. Honestly, I think I've spent hours trying to figure out the perfect kind of music to use for a boss fight in Curse of Strahd, which was the first module that I actually ran. I do not recommend doing that if you're a first-time DM. Sure, I didn't really use a lot of the music in the end because of how the campaign went, but it was still a lot of fun, and now I've got it for a future session. And that's it. That's what I've got to say about presentation in a dungeon crawl. I mentioned this in a previous video, but a lot of the advice I've laid out here can be applied to any D&D session. Pacing and presentation sum up two core skills for any great dungeon master. If you have any questions about the things I talked about or things I didn't even mention, you can feel free to ask them in the comments below. Working on this series has been really enlightening for me and has helped me understand exactly why I'm so fixated on being able to run a dungeon crawl. It's a part of the legacy of D&D, a medium of gameplay that a lot of people really enjoy, but a lot of the time it's felt really vague and undefined for me. So I felt like I had to put on my thinking cap and make these videos for you guys, but also for myself. I may not use dungeon crawls very frequently. In fact, I think they're kind of best used sparingly every few sessions or so, but I still want to be able to run them with confidence. If you enjoyed this video, let YouTube know. Oh, I did not even realize I don't have the light on. Man, I guess I'm turning into John here. Regardless, if you like this video, let YouTube know. Press like, subscribe, and ring that notification bell. It really means a lot to us. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and I'll catch you guys next time.